Augustine's The City of God is one of the most important books in the history of Western civilization. The Latin text spans more than 1,000 pages and is the longest single work to have survived from the ancient world. Yet, there haven't been any deep dives into the book on YouTube as of yet, so I figure I'd be the first one to do it. My name is Alexander Velasquez, and we're going to kick off this YouTube channel with a book-by-book analysis of Augustine's The City of God. However, before we start book 1, it makes sense to give a short introduction to the book, its background, and its context. Here's what you need to know. The Western Roman Empire was sacked in 410 AD by an army of Germanic Visigoths. Many Romans blamed Christianity for the sacking, and it's not hard to see why. The Roman Empire, throughout its expansion and at the peak of its strength, worshipped the traditional Roman gods and goddesses, such as Jupiter, Juno, Minerva, and Mars. Even some of the emperors were made gods by the Roman Senate. But here's the main point. The Romans believed that proper observation of the state religion brought them into a right relationship with the gods, and this guaranteed peace and prosperity throughout the Roman Empire. So the argument went that once the Christian religion began to gain influence in the empire and the traditional gods were no longer being worshipped, the crumbling of the Roman Empire began. And therefore, the sack of Rome by the Visigoths in 410 was the fault of the Christians. Keep in mind that it was only 30 years prior, in 380, that Christianity was made the official religion of the Roman Empire by the Emperor Theodosius I. So Augustine's response to this argument was the City of God. Augustine wrote this book over a span of 15 years, from 411, 1 year after the sack, to roughly around 426-27 AD. And the book is composed of 2 parts. The first part, books 1 through 10, defend Christians from the accusation that the fall of Rome was their fault, with the first 5 books critiquing the pagan religion and the next 5 books critiquing pagan philosophy. The second part, books 11 through 22, are different. Books 11 through 14 discuss the origins of the city of God and the earthly city of man. Books 15 through 18 discuss the histories of both cities, and books 19 through 22 discuss the final destiny of both cities. So that's a bit about the book and its context. But who was Augustine of Hippo? The best source of Augustine's life comes from his own autobiography, Confessions, but that's a 13-book work in itself, so I'll just mention some of the highlights here. Augustine was born in 354 in Thagaste, Roman North Africa, a town in the farming center and cultural backwater of the Roman Empire. He was given a good education and at the age of 11 was sent to school, where he became familiar with both the Latin literature and pagan beliefs and practices. At age 18, Augustine read Cicero's dialogue Hortensius, which taught him that happiness is not found in the luxurious pleasures of sex and food, but rather in a dedication of the mind to the discovery of truth. This gave him both the love for wisdom and the great search for truth that started his interest in philosophy. This is also what got him to start reading his Latin Bible. But the Latin Bible of his day was a painful read, especially after having gone to school and reading the Latin of Cicero and Virgil. And Augustine became offended at the polygamy of the patriarchs, as well as the seemingly conflicting genealogies of Jesus Christ in the Gospels of Matthew and Luke. As a result, Augustine became attracted to the teachings of Mani, a Gnostic of the 3rd century. Mani's teachings became a major world religion, Manichaeism, and it expressed disgust at both the physical world and the human reproductive system. So Manichaeans were forbidden from procreating. They also denied the historical reality of the crucifixion of Jesus. For them, the cross was a symbol of the suffering of humanity. Central to Manichaeism was their answer to the problem of evil, namely that God is good but not all-powerful, thus not strong enough to defeat evil. Augustine continued to be a Manichaean for about 10 years, but when he went to Milan to become a teacher of rhetoric, he no longer accepted the Manichaean mythology and began to lose faith in the religion altogether. It was during this time that Augustine met Ambrose, a Christian bishop. He taught Augustine a very different way of interpreting the Bible. His sermons also presented a Christian theology that combined a revulsion of the pagan religion with large components of Neoplatonism. At the age of 31, after having heard a reading of the life of Anthony of the Desert, Augustine converted to Christianity. Ambrose baptized Augustine. Augustine then sold his patrimony, or the property inherited from his family, and he gave the money to the poor. After converting to Christianity, Augustine devoted more time to preaching and gave less time to his profession as a professor of rhetoric. And in 391, he was ordained a priest in Hippo. He became a famous preacher, preaching around 6,000 to 10,000 sermons and combating the Manichaean religion, of which he was a former member, because he believed that the preacher's ultimate goal is to ensure the salvation of the audience. In 395, he became a full bishop, and he gave his property to the Church of Thagaste, and he remained in that position until his death in 430. In between this time from 395 to 430, Augustine worked tirelessly to convince the people of Hippo to convert to Christianity. This was a time period where he wrote his autobiography, Confessions, from 397 to 398, and The City of God was written to his fellow Christians shortly after the Visigoths sacked Rome in 410. He was a man of powerful intellect and a great public speaker who took every opportunity to defend the Christian faith against its detractors. And so there you have it, a short background into the City of God and the life of Augustine of Hippo. In the next video, we'll start our deep dive into the City of God with Book 1, where Augustine begins his attack on the pagans' belief that all the calamities of Rome and the sack of Rome is the fault of the Christian religion. I'll see you then.